and a very warm welcome. COVID-19 crisis has added new words to our everyday lexicon. Loan moratorium, loan repass, bad banks, retail NPAs, credit offtake are just some of the many new words that have been added to everyone's vocab. Financial services constitutes about 33% of the weight in Nifty indices and plays a major role as far as economic revival is concerned. However, though we have seen most of the other sectors showing decent growth since the March, the banking sector has been muted in terms of its performance as far as stock markets are concerned. To understand the nitty-gritties, the challenges forward, we have with us a subject matter expert. I am glad to be joined in by Mr. Dhaval Gala. He is a senior analyst and a fund manager with Aditya Birla Sun Life Asset Management Limited. He manages the Banking and Financial Services Fund for ABSL and has over 13 years of experience in capital markets. Dhaval, many thank you for joining in and taking our time to speak to our investors. Dhaval, my first question to you is in terms of the overall landscape of the banking sector is concerned. While we have seen, the private sector bank share increase from 28% to 37% over the last 5 years, because of varied reasons, which could be probably their technical prowess or, better underwriting skills or, maybe better management as far as governance, etc. are concerned. Do you think that there is still some way to go or the journey could probably be muted from here on? How are you playing the private sector space as far as ABSL Banking and Financial Services Fund is concerned?
Good question. Maybe to begin with, very well thought that what banks have gained market share almost by 7-8 percentage point in the last 5 years. Our broader thinking, if you ask me, in our fund and what I have a view on this particular question is that, and I'm also going to share some data or slide for the same. Very well, what we think is that the private banks market share gain story or getting bigger is here to stay. That is something what we think is the next, is going to be the story for the next few years, especially next 2-3 years when we are just coming out of the COVID crisis as well as getting back to normalcy, right? Today, even the first important question is, are the businesses back to normal? So as you mentioned, a lot of businesses or a lot of stock prices have gone back to pre-COVID level because a lot of their businesses has come back to 80-90% normalcy. And BFSI is one segment where definitely there are things going to take time. That has been our view, and maybe that was the reason why means we see the underperformance in the prices. Now looking or talking about the market share, the data you can look at the first chart on the left. In the last 5 years, as very, very clearly articulated, the market share for private banks have now become 29% versus public sector banks at 66%, and the rest is foreign banks. What I am trying to tell now is that large 3-4 private banks, especially ICICI, Axis, HDFC and Kotak, where we have even larger position in our fund across our schemes as well as Aditya Birla Banking Fund, they are really well capitalized, really well on the liquidity coverage, and they are seeing a very good deposit growth. And that is largely one because of inefficiency and lower capital ratios with public sector banks. Also the smaller private banks, right? There was a Yes Bank episode, and because of which many small banks lost share. So what we are seeing is in the next 3 years time, there would be a material gain in market share. If I have to give you an example, so there is one story which is merger of a lot of public sector bank, and because of that consolidation will happen in public sector banks. They would give out easy growth opportunities for private banks. So what we are expecting, if I have to look at 5 years in a period, right? This is a chart which showcases loan growth expectations. What I am trying to say, a big theme is that the private banks can repeat what they have done in the last 15 years in the next 5 years. The growth and as well as the market share gains they did in the last 15 years could be repeated in the next 5 years. And that is amongst a bigger number. And therefore, you could see a good outperformance by private banks or in general banking system at large from here on?
Right, Dhaval. I think you've made a very strong and convincing statement, and I hope what you're saying turns out to be true. But the ground problem or the ground reality is the fact that we have been talking about credit offtake for almost 5 years now. However, we see tremendous amount of risk aversion as far as lending to probably the real end user is concerned, and we know that for MSME sector in particular, low cost of capital is just a necessity. It is very, very important for them to function. Now, with this whole scenario and, credit offtake not even starting to show some green shoots even now as we speak, do you think it is time for some very strong regulatory intervention to happen to streamline the process and ensure actual revival to happen in the system?
You asked too many questions in one. On normal interpretation, what I am trying to understand out of this question is when do you look at credit growth improving and whether there is any regulatory or any push from either sides, whether it is government or Reserve Bank coming. So just to give you a flavor, credit growth will take some time to recover, but definitely I think the bottoms have already been made. And you very rightly mentioned that why the credit growth has been suffering for the last few years. I think I'll just showcase the same thing again. Very clearly, you look at the credit, why has that suffered, right? And if you look at one answer being a consolidation in most of the public sector banks, that is also one of the reasons. Second answer also being that there was a material NPL formation across corporate banks, including ICICI and Axis in the private space and all the public sector banks. That led to risk aversion. What we are expecting from here is what I can talk about is, you look at this chart on the left, right? The loan growth will take some time. What we are expecting, it can grow close to 8 to 10% in the coming years. This year will be very difficult because we are still not coming out of coming to normalcy, at least till October to December quarter. So maybe the March quarter would be the time when we become normal to what we were, say, till February of 2020. So that would bring the credit growth back only by then. So what we are expecting by the dip of this year, right? You see most of the lines dipping in FY21. See the light blue line, which is most of the public sector banks, they start coming back only after next year because they are now doing consolidation. So credit growth will continue to be sluggish. The important part is that a lot of credit growth was getting done by bond markets or capital market activity, which also has seen some sluggishness in the last few months. So net, what we are saying is that growth can come back in the credit versus the bond book or investment book of the banking balance sheets. But the growth would not be beyond 8-10% because we do not have even now any big capex announcements. First, now let's talk about the third part of your question, which is regulatory angles. So definitely the retail and MSME piece has a lot of underpenetration even now. If you have to dissect the overall credit growth between consumer and corporate or retail or wholesale, the retail, even in the last 3 years when the sector credit growth has been between 8 to 10%, have been growing at 14 to 18% range. So that is going to continue after the next, say, after the December quarter. This year, 9 months, even for retail and MSME will be a problem because there is a definite stress and definite disruption because of COVID. But I'm saying that retail again would be double-digit growth starting March quarterly basis. And on a whole year basis, FY22, in my opinion, would be 14% type of number for retail. MSME, government has already done a very good ECG, means extended a credit guarantee scheme, which should help growth in credit in this year itself first. But again, there would be a little slump because of a very high rise in the current year, and capacity utilization and expansion will happen only in FY22, even for MSME. So we could see credit growth even for MSME coming to double digit. But yes, on the ground economic activity plus the RBI push and the government push for across the sectors is begun, but it has to be material. and there has to be a material sentiment improvement as well for credit growth to improve materially. So net 6 more months of sluggish growth, and starting March quarter, we would see some improvement in credit growth.
Right, Dhaval. So my next question is, on the asset liability mismatch that we may be looking at, in times to come, especially as far as smaller banks are concerned. Now, RBI has cut rates close to the extent of about 115 basis points since March. While we have seen some of the bigger private banks and also State Bank of India cut its deposit rates and term rates considerably, the same has not been held across the board by smaller banks. So do you think that, they are at the brink of an asset liability mismatch? And if that is the case, do you think it is the time only to play the big banks?
So that was the case 6 months back, or at the time of Yes Bank moratorium or debacle which happened. So what happened is a lot of these smaller banks used to have a reliance on bulk deposits or capital market related deposits or wholesale deposits. That has something got into a question mark during the time of February, March. And as you rightly pointed out, right, this is one of the chart slide which would answer a lot of your questions on deposit mobilization with the size of the banks and also the rates they have cut. You look at the rate cuts which has happened with the larger banks. On the left hand side of the first chart, you see SBI, Bank of Baroda, ICICI, Kotak, HDFC Bank or Axis. They all have cut rates between 100 to 120 basis points. In fact, they've cut further in the current month. But you look at the smaller banks, right? Because of Yes Bank point, you look at IndusInd, Yes, RBL, IDFC Bank, they've not been able to cut more than 50 to 75 basis points even today. So, and that gap, in my opinion, will happen to close only over the next 6 to 12 months because retail liabilities take a lot of time to come. You can get wholesale liabilities overnight, but the retail deposit is a habit. It takes, it's just like an SIP product. It would continue even if the markets fall 20% until unless we try to not educate or over-educate our investors that this is the time to exit. If you're not going to tell them, this SIPs will continue. In fact, SIPs should have gone up in the current time, but it was also physical related issue that a lot of lockdowns have happened. This is not just a disruption. So coming back to point is, it would take some time for the smaller private banks to gain share and get their term deposit rates in line or little higher than the bigger banks. You look at the third chart, which is the most important chart, is the premium over HDFC Bank's 1-year term deposit rate for the smaller private banks is as much as 200 basis points today, which used to be close to 100 basis points for the last many years. You look at the right-hand side bottom chart, you look at SA rates cut. Most of the banks today offer only 3% or corridor of 25 basis points plus minus SA rate, whereas these banks are still offering at least 5.5 to 6.5% range, which is almost double the number on savings deposit. So what I am saying is, if a bank is going to borrow at a higher cost, they cannot lend to the same corporate or high quality corporate or high quality retail account at the similar lending rate. They will have to choose marginally lower category or lower rating profile of customers on wholesale as well as retail. So what happens is you underwrite more risk than the normal large private banks. And because the scenario is uncertain and it is still challenging times and we have not got back to normal, the large banks would benefit materially. One is on the liability side, as you mentioned, and a part which you not asked, but I would just show, this is talking about the rates coming down and the market share up. This is something one you should look at, is that they will gain a lot on the asset side because their rates are lower than the smaller private banks. They can offer home loan rates similar to PSU banks because their cost of funding is now got similar. And they can offer even AAA corporate borrowers similar rates what PSU banks used to offer, but these smaller banks will not be able to offer. So that is the difference, right? So you make easy profits for the larger banks.
Right. And I think, that, kind of answers my first question that, in terms of market share, the bigger banks are well positioned as well. So,
Right.
Dhaval, now everyone's been talking about loan moratorium and everybody was hoping for a restructuring, which finally has come true. However, the critics argue that, it is not really a restructuring, but it is actually a deferral of sorts. And it would have been better had we recognized these NPAs sooner than later. Do you subscribe to these views? And if you have any contra views, what would they be?
So it's too early days even now. So the officially moratoriums only get over in end of August. Until we have any announcements from Reserve Bank that they are extending. Ideally, they should not, because it is disrupting the behavior of monthly repayment. Definitely, they needed helping hand in the first 3 months, and you've given 6 months actually of moratorium, which is a very decent time frame, but all comes with a cost. Now, what is restructuring, right? So RBI this time around has put a lot of restrictions. It is not going to be restructuring across the board so simply the way it used to happen in the past. And our behavior, our experience is suggesting that the restructuring have been very poor in the past, or it has led to NPL deferrals in a material manner. Uh, this time around, we are just expecting it to be a little different, but it is too early to say that whether it will be different or how will the restructuring be. At least the rules are a little tighter than the last time. One important rule is that companies which have been not paying on time even in the past, or they were not part, basically there are many companies in India who defer monthly repayments, and they are 30 days past due, 60 days past due, or they pay after the due dates, right? So this time around, RBI has put across restriction where people like that would not get restructuring. They would not be eligible. So this definitely weeds out all the weaker corporates which were weak even before COVID. Leave aside COVID, definitely would have made them more weaker. But that is companies which will not get restructuring. So the misuse will not happen of the uh, regulatory forbearance which RBI is willing to give to banks or extending to banks. I just wanted to show one chart here because it is relevant, and my worry is that the restructuring could have a different. Means I just give you a slide which can tell you that how restructuring happened or played out in the last cycle, and maybe then people are good enough to make comments or conclusion. So this is one slide which you can look at, that in 2008-9 cycle during GFC, we had a very big restructuring cycle which began. So a lot of banks did restructuring and did not make companies NPL during the time of 2008-9 cycle. So you see the left hand side blue chart, right? Sorry, on the chart, you look at the light blue and the dark blue shades. The light blue is the restructured loans. What happened is since 2009 to 2014-15, when the restructuring was allowed, there was a big proportion of increase in the restructured loans. This time around, the restructuring is only allowed till 31st of December 2020. So that is a different thing. Very important to note here is that since the restructuring to now, everything largely has come into NPL category. So it has been, your question or your concern has been right, that it's only deferral of NPLs, right? This time around, we are expecting it to be different, but all said and done, this is one of the big worries. Now, just to give you a conclusion, right, I'll give you one simple thought process on what we are expecting on NPAs, right? NPAs, overall banks, right, would go up by close to 300 basis points. Especially, it would be also for private banks, and for public banks, it could be higher. And I'm talking about, these are more of our coverage banks. Maybe there are smaller banks which are already having more than 10% NPAs. I've not put that as part of my estimation. So the point I'm saying is that the bank already had very high credit costs even in the past. You look at the left chart at the bottom. But because of COVID, there would be some increase, which is already been provided by the large private banks to my expectations. But the point is, because they were running already high credit cost, there would not be a problem which will continue for 2-3 years. In my opinion, a lot of provisioning cycle will get over in this financial year for our portfolio stocks or the large private banks.
Right. And we hope the same as well, Dhaval. So, this is, a question on everybody's mind because, if you talk about HDFC Twins or Bajaj Finance, it is one of the top holdings in most of the large cap portfolios or in the multi cap portfolios. And both of them have had, their unique problems in spite of them being excellent franchisees to hold. Though, some amount of succession planning has become clearer that, there is an internal successor to Mr. Aditya Puri. The critics of Bajaj Finance say that, they have not really seen a bad cycle of retail NPAs because they have only been in existence for the last 10 to 12 years. And that, kind of puts in a lot of concern as to how they're going to be able to respond to this whole retail NPA cycle, which probably may happen in the subsequent months. So, as a fund manager who manages a banking and financial services fund, interacting with the management of these companies, how do you think they are positioned to take care of, the challenges that may impose to these two companies in specific? And a disclaimer here that these are not stock recommendations; these are just for broader understanding.
So, HDFC Bank has been a boring compounding company in many fund management parlance. If you talk about, they've been compounding their earnings now almost 20% plus, even in the last 4 years, post say 2015, 16 times. Earlier, they used to have 30% earnings compounding. Is that changing because of the change in the management? In my opinion, Mr. Sasi Jagdishan has been with the bank now for close to 24, 25 years. He's been a key important fellow for Mr. Aditya Puri for now many years, and he's been the face of the bank when it comes to investor relations or interactions also. So that should not be a concern. Definitely, there would be some worry that there could be some changes here and there in the other top management team, but I don't think there would be any earnings related shocks we should be there because of the change of management. It could be because of COVID related issues, and we still have to wait and see how much COVID, whether there is any resurfacing of COVID cases or any wave 2 or cycle 2 of COVID, and is there any lockdowns which could continue, right? Even today, as we are discussing, there are few states which have complete lockdown, few states have partial lockdown. Say city like Mumbai, where I am saying there is the local trains have not begun. Since till the time local trains don't begin, things are not normal as such. So every city has some or the other challenges still now. To make a simple answer, I don't think so too much of a problem. There could be some material derating or re-rating depending how the next 6 months go after he becomes CEO and Mr. Puri gets retired. But I don't see a long-term changes in my earnings expectation for the company. So that is something one should look at. Now talking about say Bajaj Finance, right? Your question is right that they've not seen a big credit cycle in the last 10, 12 years. Since the time that this management team took over, they had a big problem in 2008-9 before this management team came in. So it's not that it's a very new company. It's a very old company, more than 2.5 decades or 3 decades of experience even with Bajaj Finance. The only thing is that the changed version or the big digital fintech avatar or the consumer lending part became very big only in the last 7, 8 years. And I continue to remain bullish on both these companies. If your question is not on stock recommendation, but I continue to remain very bullish on both these companies. See, very important, they are retail on financing types on the asset side of the balance sheet. So retail underwriting is not very easy and it is not built overnight. So on the balance sheet, they are very good on the underwriting portion. So the half problem is solved for Bajaj Finance at least. On the liability side, HDFC Bank is the best on the cost. We have already seen you the charts, the growth rates, the CASA deposit franchise, and the customer franchise. So HDFC Bank has no problems. Bajaj Finance, being a wholesale on the liability side, would have some problems, but you look at the cost of funds they have, right? They are the best in class, even during the problems of the liquidity in the month of March and April. So they are there with HDFC Limited. So they are amongst the strong non-banks in the country. Now to talk about Bajaj Finance is amongst the best digital ready player in the country when it comes to consumer lending. And I'm telling you, digital ready, consumer lending, fintech, these are the words or the people keep reading on the newspapers constantly. in my view, this is one of the companies which has done exceedingly well when it comes to disrupting a lot of traditional way of doing consumer loans. So that is one of the strength, and that doesn't get changed. Key important other parameters one should consider: they have 25% capital adequacy ratio. They have huge liquidity and good cost of funds versus most of the other NBFC companies. In fact, they have better cost of funds than even large, smaller private banks. So you can understand the competitive strength. And the third important point, they make very high PPOP margins. So they have the strength to provide when it comes to NPL numbers, if at all, which would come because of COVID. All said and done, they have 100% retail book. HDFC Bank has 50% retail book. So in the interim, they'll be impacted the most.
Thank you so much. And we have covered public sector banks, private sector banks, and to some extent NBFCs. So I have a couple of questions on the so-called sunrise sectors. So first one is about insurance, and you hold a considerable amount of that in your portfolio as well. So there are two things which are worth discussing as far as insurance is concerned. One is, even before COVID, we were an underpenetrated market as far as life insurance is concerned, and general insurance also. Now with COVID, there has been some change in the psychology of a lot of consumers out there. So there are people who are now more open to the ideas of health insurance as well as life insurance. And we have seen a sudden demand in immediate annuity also, because rates are getting contracted. But on the other hand, we have another segment like auto insurance, where we have not seen much of a growth, A, because the new sales are not happening for automobiles, and B, a lot of renewals are not happening. But having said that, and given the context that we are not so highly penetrated market, what is your view on insurance sector? And within insurance, segment wise, what would be your broader outlook?
So I think you guys have done a lot of homework. Our portfolios, Aditya Birla Banking Financial Services portfolio has a significant weightage in insurance companies and non-lending financials. So what I tell you, basically the presentation I shared, right? If you look at my first slide, and I'll give you an answer. So what we are looking at is, we are looking at this as a one very important theme. So these are the two themes which we are playing. I've already discussed a lot about large private banks or large NBFCs and the big getting bigger story. And your question has been right, that how you look at non-lending financials. Our expectations on non-lending financials is that they would be a bigger compounding stories than the normal lending organizations, because they are not so much impacted when it comes to on the balance sheet because of COVID. So this is just one slide. I think you are able to view it, right, Harsh? So,
yeah, very much.
So this is the market cap movement of companies in the last 7-8 years. So to why I have chosen 2012, because that is the time when we started Aditya Birla Sun Life Banking Financial Services Fund. Very clearly, if you look at insurance companies, then was not even listed, the large players. The general insurance companies were not listed, and there were hardly any exchanges or any AMC listed on during that point in time. Even today, there are a handful of 7-8 companies which are direct pay listed on life and general insurance and AMC companies. Definitely, there will be a lot of new listings which will happen over the period of next 3 years. What I am saying is, even today, the market cap dissection, and these are numbers are pre-COVID. Even today, we have not achieved this market cap. So any which ways, we are very bullish. But even in the post-COVID era, these guys have outperformed the private banks and the overall lenders, NBFC, HFCs, etc. Today, the market share they have, right, AMC, general insurance, life insurance, is still less than 15%. My opinion is this will keep going up. And that's why our portfolio, if you look at, close to 20 to 22% of the portfolio is in all these companies. Now coming to what are the themes we like within this non-lending financials. If you ask me, life insurance sector, I have made this case study or a thought process. What I see is that life insurance companies can compound at 12 to 15% their enterprise value or their embedded value over the next 3 years, whereas banks would not be able to showcase a steady 15% type of book value compounding, excluding the capital raising they did right now. So that is one important thing. The second, in India, most of the life insurance companies are distribution platforms. They do not have characteristics like life insurance companies globally. They do not have so much of balance sheet risk of giving a lot of guaranteed product. Generally, they have done is ULIP or participating products. Even LIC has a big participating product pool. Definitely, they do guarantee products, but it is LIC. It's a public sector entity. But at least private banks, private insurance companies have not done too much of guarantee product. And other than the disruption of physical disruption of lockdown, in fact, today life insurance companies are here to benefit because there is a lot of attachment towards life and people are going to buy the term products materially. And today we are the most underpenetrated. If you look at these charts, right, sum assured in India is the least penetrated. Basically, the credit protect or term products are most underpenetrated when it comes to India. They are this is another important part on the financials, because a lot of questions come. Already life insurance stocks have moved up massively even after COVID, and they are very expensive versus the global companies, global insurance companies. The important part is that they are seeing growth a lot in protection business and the credit protect business, which is the left hand side, the first chart. They have the highest margin products. And today the best part is that the four best life insurance companies are listed, and the largest private life insurance companies are listed, and therefore they're getting higher multiple, and you see their margins are expanding. And the bottom chart is comparing them with the global companies, that the sensitivity to interest rates, right? Because if you sell guaranteed products and your interest rates in country keeps going down, which has been the case, that we are leading or living in the negative interest rate when it comes to global, right? Not India. They would have a lot of impact on their embedded value. You can look at the Indian companies actually benefit because we invest a lot of product in the GSEC. So that is about the life insurance part. I like general insurance sector and the AMC sector even more than the life insurance space, purely because of under penetration. Again, in the general insurance space, there are what I see is the way private banks were placed in 2007-8, right, versus public banks. They were smaller market share, and there were many public banks which were thriving then and posing problems to private banks, right? But what happened is NPA cycle, restructuring cycle came, and steadily the public sector banks kept losing market share because of the weakness of the fundamentals. Today, we have 4 big general insurance companies, government owned. All are facing problem when it comes to solvency ratio and underwriting losses. So their combined ratios, which is one important parameter one looks in general insurance, is running between 115 to 125%, which is way higher than the private sector average between 100 to 105. So the point I'm trying to make here is, again, the large and the best general insurance companies are listed. First is ICICI Lombard, which is a big portion of our portfolio. Even Bajaj Finserv, which owns Bajaj Life, Bajaj General, and Bajaj Finance, which is part of our portfolio in a big way. But their general insurance is the second best business in terms of size and profits in India in the private sector space. The good part is the best businesses are listed. They have less than 1% market share as a percentage of GDP, the premium as a percentage of GDP. For most of the global countries, this is excess of 3 to 4% or even higher number. Some countries, developed countries, the general insurance premium as a percentage of GDP is close to double digit. So we have a very long way to go when it comes to penetration story. Unlike life insurance, where LIC is very efficient and a strong competitor, in general insurance, there are weak, large public sector companies which are not able to compete with these private banks efficiently. So, and again, pandemic has brought a lot of importance to Mediclaim or having more cover than what it used to be. This is a temporary phenomena. It's not going to continue forever. The moment next year we become normal or there are vaccines, so people will forget life insurance and general insurance for some time. But the new habits don't just change. The whatever incremental big penetration we do as a country now will sustain. And for mutual fund industry, if I have to give a simple stories, financial saving stories continuing to just become bigger. Today we have close to $2,000 of per capita income. The moment the expectation is that this could double in the next 7 to 8 years time. Our history suggests that retail loans and retail savings move up materially when they cross the hurdle number of $2,500 to $3,000. That is what has been seen in many of the developed countries. So I see that a lot of things are very good for retail loans, retail insurance, and retail savings, which is AMC sector as well. So these are the segments, in my view, are here to stay or can compound at actually more than nominal GDP, which could be 10 to 12%.
Thank you, Dhaval. That was a very, very detailed response, and we totally concur with you because all the legends in the industry, they have been talking about insurance for a very, very long time. Be it Warren Buffett, who has been a key who made his money primarily through insurance, and now even Indian government is looking to list LIC to cover up whatever deficit it would have in the next 1 year or so. So it is the go-to sector for anyone and everyone in the world. But one of the sectors which you mentioned towards the end of your last question, and where we are having some apprehensions, we thought we will discuss with you and try to understand from you. Now, in the last 3 to 4 months, we have seen a big dichotomy in the behaviors of investors. So if you listen to the commentary of Zerodha, or if you listen to ICICI Securities, they are seeing huge amount of growth in terms of new account getting opened. In fact, if we see the ownership of Indian retail investors of the equity market, it seems to be increasing over the last 3 to 4 months. But on the other hand, if we look at AMC business, surprisingly, last month was the first month after a long gap when we had net outflow in equity funds. And that is not a very, very great sign for that industry. So is it that the investment pattern of the investor is changing from a mutual fund or an index fund or maybe an ETF towards more of direct equity, because that seems to be easier to manage, and maybe we have seen some amount of underperformance as well from active fund managers in last 4 to 5 years. So how do we read this kind of confusion that we are seeing in the market at this point of time?
So a point to answer here is see, the new trends or the disruptions or a lot of account opening has been the case across the globe. It's not that the Indians have seen so much of account openings, right? You look at US, right? Well penetrated market when it comes to financial services and financial services products or complex derivative trading, etc. People do a lot of option trading or many complex products. Still, there were humongous new account opening there. I would say a lot of lockdown related thing, and people started taking their financial services very seriously, or financial that has also led to a lot of account opening. And you have to give credit to players like Zerodha or many Upstocks or Angel trying to disrupt itself, ICICI Securities, opening Demat accounts or turning around to open Demat accounts really fast, right? Without any human interventions, or even during lockdowns. Showcases that there are a lot of people who started investing directly, but this is not the phenomena which can continue so easily. The moment you have, so a lot of people were even having free time, is what I get the survey answers from most of these exchanges or companies in the broking houses. Second, definitely you look at mutual fund investments and you try to compare during the bad times. You would say, I would rather invest myself. Generally, we have seen in 2006-07 cycle also, people do understand after one fall that it's not their cup of tea. Else, active fund management or whether it is passive fund management wouldn't have existed very clearly. Another thing I'll make a point, Harsh, which you should consider, I don't have that data right now, else I would have even showcased that data, is that Indian individual ownership in equities is amongst the far lowest in many other countries. So I don't see that even if they have to invest directly, the flow in mutual fund or insurance companies' savings products will not happen. The current disruption is also to do with lower GDP growth and lower savings as such. And I think it should come back. So it's a highly cyclical environment for these savings product or for mutual fund flows if you are going to look at it on a monthly basis. What happens is you would have sweet spot of next 1 or 2 years when economic growth turns around very well and savings going up again. You would see again a big flows. Again, you should not multiply that flows into a compounding number. So there will be cyclicality when it comes to flows in the mutual fund industry, and I am not worried about that. Now coming to a point on ETFs and index funds, etc., or passive funds. So that is a trend we've seen in US and many other countries, that has become a big pie. Here also it would come, but I don't see that is happening, say, in the immediate next 6-12 months. But yes, newer products, disruption in this part of the market, which is our ANC industry as well, is going to happen. And we should be having one eye on that, or being ready on that part as well.
I totally agree, because we are seeing a lot of initiatives from established players, even like you, who are exploring ideas of, fund of fund, index funds, and all. Dhaval, that brings me to the last question what we have, and that is more about the trend which we have seen in last few years. So if I remember, 15, 20 years back, we used to have cooperative bank scams. We used to have smaller banks getting into trouble. We used to have issues which were more geographically confined and localized issues. But now what we have seen in last few years is, starting with ILFS, which was a guerrilla organization, so to say, defaulting. Then we had issues in terms of banks like Yes Bank, where government had to intervene and save the investors. So how do you think that impacting this particular sector going forward, both from stakeholders' point of view, investors' point of view, as well as government point of view?
Just a point here is definitely, see, if you look at the scams and the problems which has happened, it's not so often which happens. Yes Bank of an issue, in my view, is once in a decade type of a problem. I don't think so many banks folding up so easily. And now the Reserve Bank is actually did a very good thing when it comes to restructuring Yes Bank the way they did, right? Because merging Yes Bank would have been a big problem for any other bank also, because Yes Bank did have a lot of toxic loans. Now the point is, can we envisage such problems happen again or not? In cooperative bank, definitely there are a lot of more problems yet to get cleansed, and because there are no ownership structures which could take so easily, I think that overhaul will happen in the next 12 to 18 months, though I am not an expert that how and when or what would be the shape of consolidating cooperative banks. But I think that steps have already begun. You can see the discussion papers from RBI's website are already there on that direction. Talking about smaller banks, private banks in India as well, I see that in the next 3 to 5 years, there will be a lot of consolidation. So I don't think so people are going to lose money from a depositor's point of view, because RBI has showcased with even Yes Bank that they are there and government is also there. So depositors need not worry, but yes, equity holders would have issues sometime or the other if the bank is not doing right. So I think basically I'm just trying to mention is, earlier Megha did ask a question that there could be asset liability mismatches in the smaller banks. I think that problem has got resolved, but they are sitting on a very high liquidity even today because they are scared. And it is not that they're going to overnight build retail liability franchise. It's going to take time. So net, what I can say very clearly, I don't foresee any problem in the near term. A lot of NBFCs also, right? The larger HFC, NBFCs, the question you not asked, which were in the newspapers that they might close or there might be some problems, etc., are also getting tackled very well behind the scenes. So apart from Diwan Housing, we've not seen any issues post that, though there are many names like that. And you can look at the stock prices of so many other companies like that. But there are some or the other ways which we are working out to solve the problem. From an equity point of view, it is a difficult time for a lot of these companies. But net rest, I'm thinking that I think most of the problems are behind us on that side.
Thank you, Dhaval, for a very, very comforting answer, and that to the last question. So that brings us to an end of our discussion. And the key learning which we have had from this discussion was about understanding the relevant advantage or relative advantage of large versus smaller entities. And second being, non-lending financials will keep on increasing their market share in the overall pie. And the punchline from this entire conversation is that private banks to repeat last 15 years in next 5 years. And that is very heartening to hear. Thank you so much for taking out time on a busy day and taking our questions. And we are very sure that our investors would learn a lot from this, and it would help overall in terms of understanding of the financial sector. Thank you so much for your time and patience, and thanks for very detailed answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you, Megha. Thank you, Tiruvala. Thanks a lot.